Prepositional verbs in English are expressions that combine a verb and a preposition to make a new verb with a different meaning. They require verbs and prepositions to connect the objects of a sentence, making prepositions act as links between verbs and objects. Prepositional verbs consist of transitive verbs and closely related prepositions, and they require transitive verbs as they cannot stand by themselves. Some very common prepositions connected with transitive verbs are for, to, about, with, of, in, at, from, on, off, up, and more. These prepositions can be placed with almost any verb, and when placed, the meaning of the verbs will change indefinitely. In this video, I will explain the meaning of each prepositional verb in comparison to its original version. Because prepositional verbs are transitive, they always take direct objects after the preposition and cannot be separated. Let's take a look. He listens to music every night. This phrase uses the prepositional verb to listen, meaning to give attention to a sound. This sentence is correct because the prepositional verb is not separated and the object comes after the preposition. If the preposition is missing, the sentence becomes, he listens music every night. This is incorrect because the verb to listen requires a preposition to connect to its object, music. Additionally, we can replace music with its pronoun form, and the meaning will remain. He listens to it every night. This is how prepositional verbs work in English. Here are examples of transitive verbs with prepositions along with previous English concepts. I asked for a raise. You listen to me. He cares about the kids. She goes with him. We always think of the future. They are involved in the business. I stared at the building. You recovered from the injury. It depends on the weather. The airplane took off. We gave up our jobs. These sentences have prepositional verbs, and we can tell their meanings by looking at placements with the verb and preposition. If we omitted the prepositions, we would have original verbs with different meanings and sentences that would not make sense at all. Here's what happens. I asked for a raise means that I requested to speak, and in this case, the preposition for combines with ask, making asked for. I asked for a raise. Without the preposition, the sentence is I asked a raise. It completely doesn't make sense because it means that I'm saying a question to get information from the object, a raise. It doesn't make sense, so we need a prepositional verb. You listen to me has listen to, meaning to pay attention to a sound. But without the preposition, it's you listen me, not making sense simply by having a direct object pronoun with no connection to the verb. He cares about the kids means that he attaches importance to something. In this case, it's the kids, but without the preposition, it's he cares the kids, meaning he's affectionate but doesn't link to the object, again with no sense. She goes with him means that she has a romantic relationship with him. Without it, it's she goes him, physically moving from place to place, with no correlation to the direct object pronoun, again not making sense by itself. We always think of the future means we're considering something when deciding on a possible action. Without the preposition, it's we always think the future, meaning to have an opinion on something, again without connection. They are involved in the business means they participate in an activity or situation. Without it, it's they are involved the business, meaning to include the business as a part. Without connection, there is no logic. I stared at the building means I looked at the building for a long time, but without the preposition, it's I stared the building. Simply to stare means to have open eyes without any connection. So again, it's not logical. You recovered from the injury means to get well after an injury. Without it, it's you recovered the injury, meaning to return something to a normal state. In this case, you returned the injury to a normal state, again not making sense. It depends on the weather means to be conditioned by, but without it, it's it depends the weather, meaning to need for support that doesn't make sense from the weather. The airplane took off means that the airplane became airborne, but without the preposition, it's the airplane took, meaning the airplane obtained something with its hands, which is obviously something it cannot do. we gave up our jobs means we ceased making an effort and resigned to failure in our jobs. Without it, it's we gave our jobs, meaning to transfer the possession of something to someone, which cannot be done with jobs. This is the vital role of prepositional verbs. The prepositions act as links connecting the verbs with new meanings. What's very important to know with prepositional verbs is the word order. Prepositional verbs always take direct objects after the preposition and cannot be separated. So this means that the structure of the verb and preposition cannot be broken and must remain by itself. The object of prepositional verbs always comes immediately after the preposition. But there is an exception to this rule, and that is when an adverb is used to modify the prepositional verb. An adverb can appear between the verb and preposition, which separates the structure, but still, the object will follow the preposition. For instance, I asked for a raise can have an adverb between asked and for, like I asked politely for a raise. It's perfectly fine to say that because the meaning remains. However, just because an adverb can appear, it doesn't mean it works every time. With the examples I gave, only sometimes an adverb will work, but at other times, it's not logical enough to be in the structure of prepositional verbs. Still, that doesn't mean that an adverb cannot be used at all. Adverbs can be used in any sentence, even with a prepositional verb, as long as their placement makes sense. Moreover, the word order of prepositional verbs is essential in understanding the structure. As I said, the object of prepositional verbs always comes after the preposition, even when put into question. The structure of prepositional verbs will still keep the verb and preposition, but the word order in questions might change a little, as you can see in some of the examples. Ultimately, many phrases can be made with almost any transitive verb and any preposition, thus making prepositional verbs. There could be for, to, about, with, of, in, at, on, from, and others that may have multiple prepositions in one sentence. How you utilize them and emphasize the structure based on what you want to say is entirely up to you. You can make any phrase with any prepositional verb as long as the connection and structure are there. In English, there are hundreds of prepositional verbs because one preposition can be exploited with any transitive verb. As I always say, the best way to learn them is through repetition and practice. But because there are no established methods to determine which prepositions accompany which verbs, it's best to memorize some of the most common prepositional verbs. If you would like to learn more, I have 2 links in the description that will lead to articles, which is from where I took the examples. At last, one final concept with prepositional verbs is phrasal verbs. A phrasal verb is a verb with a preposition, adverb, or both that makes a different meaning from the combined meanings of the words. Sometimes, a phrasal verb can be mistaken for a prepositional verb. Although both combinations have verbs and prepositions, we can tell the difference by looking at the word order. But most importantly, the structure of phrasal verbs can be rearranged, unlike prepositional verbs whose structure cannot be separated. For example, the meaning of ask doesn't change when combined with the preposition for, like he asked for a raise. But it changes dramatically when combined with the preposition out, like he asked out Emma. He asked for a raise gives the literal meaning of to request to speak, where he requested to speak about a raise, making it a prepositional verb. Saying he asked a raise for simply cannot be, but with a phrasal verb, we can rearrange the order of the verb and preposition, like he asked out Emma, or he asked Emma out. This time, to ask out means to invite someone on a date, making it a phrasal verb whose structure can be separated, so the meaning is the same. Furthermore, we can use a direct object pronoun instead, and the meaning will be the same. He asked her out. When comparing a prepositional verb to a phrasal verb, the meaning of the prepositional verb is different from the original meaning, but the meaning of a phrasal verb is usually similar. Another example is put on your jacket. To put on means to place an item of clothing on one's body, but to put similarly means to place something in a particular position. Nonetheless, the connection between the meanings of the verbs is existent, so it's possible to separate the phrasal verb by saying put your jacket on, and even then, we can use a direct object pronoun. Put it on. This is the difference between phrasal verbs and prepositional verbs in English.